Hello and welcome back to Special Breaking News and True Crime with Gabs. Today, as you can see, I have Chris, Sheriff Chris Nanos up on the screen. Just blow him up. I don't know if you guys have heard, but he is no longer in communication with the Guthrie family. The FBI is now in communication with the Guthrie family. Why? Who knows? Um, this case, you know, it's been so many days. Okay, it's at today marks 106 days. Where's Nancy? Um, Sheriff now is holding back details. Let me see if there's anything else that's new besides let's go to YouTube. All right, so I'm gonna go to YouTube. I'm gonna play the Brian Inton video. Um, that's how I know that uh Sheriff Chris Nanos is no longer talking with the family now that it's the FBI now. So let's watch that, and then we're gonna go over a couple things. Um, but one of the things I really wanted to do is I want to give shout outs to the YouTubers that have been out here, and even local, like ones that are local. I want to get a shout out to 857 Tucson. I want to get a shout out to Criminal Network. I want to get a shout out to JLR. I want to give a shout out to Dad's Gone Live. I want to give a shout out to um Ted, I believe his name is Ted Investigates, and then you have the Juice. And you have some others, but I wanted to give these YouTubers a shout out. They're taking time out of they're taking time out of their day and out of their lives to help bring uh this bring Nancy's case to light and make sure that her name is still out there. So I'm going to share and we are going to watch this. Actually, not cute like that.
New interview with the sheriff where he shares some new information.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Please click to subscribe. I really appreciate all of the support. It's now been 104 days since Nancy Guthrie vanished from her home in Tucson, Arizona. New in this episode, there's a new interview with the sheriff where he shares some new information. First of all, he says that he's no longer communicating with the Guthrie family directly, which I found to be interesting. Also, why he still has hope in the DNA evidence and what for him would make this a cold case, which is the first time I've ever heard him really talk about the possibility of a cold case. I'm going to get into all of it in this episode of Brian Ensign Investigates. All right, hey guys. So I want to go through some of these new things that Sheriff Nanos said. He was speaking to People Magazine. I actually know the reporter. I met her when I was out there. She was also out there for a couple weeks right after Nancy went missing. And some of this stuff is interesting. I mean, there's some new developments here. And that's the thing about Sheriff Nanos that I've found is, when you can talk to him, if he'll answer his phone or whatever, sometimes he'll just start talking and he'll start saying things and you're like, oh, wow, some of this stuff is new, which seems like is kind of what happened here with this People Magazine interview. So I'm going to get to Morgan Wright, former investigator and law enforcement expert, in a minute to kind of go over what some of this means. But let me walk you through some of this. This stood out to me the most. According to People Magazine and their discussion with the sheriff, he is no longer directly communicating with the Guthrie family and says those conversations are being handled by the FBI, which is interesting because remember, initially, it appeared that he was having communication with Savannah and with the Guthrie family, and he is technically in charge of the investigation still as the sheriff of Pima County. Remember, it was never handed over to the FBI. So the fact that he is acknowledging that he is no longer directly communicating with the Guthrie family and says those conversations are being handled by the FBI, there's been a lot of curiosity. Is Savannah Guthrie, are the Guthries getting frustrated with the sheriff based on all of this reporting that's been out there, that I've done, that's been out there, mistakes that have been made? Could they be frustrated, or were they still talking to him and happy behind the scenes? And it sounds like they're, according to the sheriff, no longer directly communicating with the sheriff. So I found that to be very interesting, and that is something new that I didn't know. He said, quote, and this is the sheriff, "The public is frustrated, even the Guthrie family." So they're also acknowledging that the Guthrie family is frustrated, which how can you blame them? I mean, I think that even though they haven't said that outright, how could they not be frustrated? I mean,
I can't speak for Annie or Tommaso, but those videos that the several videos that Savannah has put out, you could tell that she is very frustrated, and she's still frustrated. I think, I also think that's why she walked off mid-show, a couple weeks ago, because, you know, her mom's still missing, and who knows what they're hearing and what's going on. But yeah.
it's now been more than 3 months, and they still have no resolution. They have no idea where Nancy is. And at the same time, there's sort of this controversy that continues to develop around the sheriff throughout this whole thing. So there he's acknowledging the public is frustrated, even the Guthrie family is frustrated. Every passing second must feel like 100 days because they don't know. What matters is moving forward carefully so we don't make any mistakes or falsely accuse somebody or make a bad arrest. Interesting you said that, because remember when I was there were 2 times where they didn't specifically falsely accuse someone, but they detained people, the time in Rio Rico and then the time close to Nancy's house. So he's saying that they don't want to make mistakes like that again, I guess. But interesting that he's saying that even the Guthrie family is frustrated.
I think the reason why he's saying that, that Sheriff Nanos is saying, Sheriff Chris Nanos is saying that, like, we don't make mistakes, with arrest again. I think it's because I know he's getting sued by a former Pima County jail inmate, but who knows? He could be getting sued by, also getting sued by these two ones, these two, these SWAT things, with these people, that were arrested, or blah, and the whole thing with the Nancy Guthrie case. So he could possibly be getting sued by them. And that's probably why he is very, now especially, he's probably getting, being more careful now, because he knows that he's like, I already got 3 losses on me, I don't need a 4th one on me.
That's new. In terms of DNA, this is new. This is what he said. "I know we have DNA that is unknown who the contributor or depositor is, but I think they're getting closer to finding out who that was," adding that he has confidence in our labs. So the fact that he said they are getting closer to finding out who that was, that's optimistic. That's promising. I mean, I hope that's true behind the scenes. We know that they had the hair strand, that they were looking at the rootless hair, and that they were attempting to do genetic genealogy, investigative genetic genealogy, when they look at bigger family trees and try to narrow it down. So that's promising that he said that he thinks they're getting closer to finding out who that was. He says, "When the labs tell us hey, there's nothing else we can do, well, then maybe we've got a problem, we've got a cold case. But right now, the labs aren't telling us that. Interesting to hear him actually say cold case, that then he believes they'd have a cold case. Gosh, I hope it doesn't get to that point. But that just goes back to everything that I've been reporting from my sources close to the investigation who have said that, they're waiting on this DNA, but there's really not a lot that they're going on right now. They don't have a suspect. They don't have any solid leads. And he's kind of acknowledging that right now. They're waiting on the DNA. And if that doesn't work out, then maybe we've got a problem. We've got to go cold case, he said. So sort of good news in a way that they are still waiting on the DNA, folks, and that they haven't ruled anything out and the labs aren't telling them that they've got a problem, but also kind of not the best news if you think about it from the perspective of what if they aren't able to get anything off that hair, or if they have other samples that we don't know about, does that mean that they then have a cold case based on what the sheriff said? Digital evidence, he says this includes thousands and thousands of videos, digitally camera footage, he says, at the center of the investigation, an enormous catalog of surveillance footage from intersections, neighborhoods, businesses, home security systems. He said, this is a quote, there's thousands and thousands of video out there from intersections and ring cameras that we have to catalog. Maybe it's all the white trucks are over there, all the red sedans are over here. You've got to have it so when you do find a suspect, hey, the suspect is John Doe, we got him, now we'll go say, well, what else do we know about John Doe? So that's not entirely new. We knew that they were looking through all the traffic cameras, and apparently they're cataloging all the vehicles. So even though they don't know who the suspect is or what vehicle the suspect was driving or suspects, it sounds like he's saying once they figure that out, hopefully when they figure that out, they'll be able to quickly go back and identify somebody.
I think, and I'm gonna go find that video for you guys, but I think it's definitely 3, and I think they all were in one car.
These cars on these traffic cams around the time that Nancy went missing. He also talked about false arrests. Nobody wants to, this is a quote, nobody wants to make a false statement. Nobody wants to falsely accuse someone. At some point in time, someday, we may have somebody in a courtroom that deserves his or her right to a fair and impartial trial. The way you get that is through a fair and impartial investigation. My team, I've said all along, they're going to solve this. I fully 100% believe that. Again, I just think back to Rio Rico and the other bust near Nancy's house when, remember that federal search warrants had people in custody and that didn't pan out. So it sounds like they don't want that to happen again. And by the way, we still have never seen that federal search warrant, which I'm still waiting to get my hands on to figure out why they were able to do that. What sort of evidence did they have to connect Nancy Guthrie to those folks? Because apparently none of it panned out, It seems like that had nothing to do with the investigation. This is interesting. He also talked about FBI tension, which has been something I've talked a lot about on my podcast and on News Nation. Remember from the beginning, I've been reporting that there was tension between the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. And
we're going to get into that too. We're going to get into the tension between the Sheriff's Department and the FBI. I don't know if you know, but we'll play that video also by Barrington. And yeah, so we're going to get into that as well.
We had Kash Patel, the FBI director, coming out and saying that they were kept out of the investigation for the first 4 days, that the sheriff wanted to send the DNA to his private lab in Florida that they use and not to Quantico, which, by the way, if you go back to my episode from yesterday, Dr. Hines, one of the county supervisors, said he wishes that they would have gone with the FBI just because of the money aspect, that he believes that the Nancy Guthrie case has already cost the county $1 million, and that if they had just let the FBI take the DNA and handle the investigation, it would have saved the county a lot of money, which is something that I hadn't heard discussed before. So he said it would have been better for the investigation because it's the FBI and they have more experience, but it also would have been better for the county because they would have saved a ton of money, $1 million, he's saying, if it had gone to the FBI. But this is what Sheriff Nanos said in this new interview about FBI tension. He says he denied the claim of tension between the FBI and his agency. He says coordination between his officers and the FBI began soon after learning of Nancy's disappearance. He said Director Patel has his right to his opinions, adding that he believes some remarks were factually inaccurate. He says the FBI was with us 2 minutes and it is ready to go. 50 off and use code N has contacted to make sure that my data is not public. They also have this thing called control than people realize, and something that makes me believe that too is this new information that the sheriff isn't even. The first thing I wanted to ask you about, though, there's this new interview with the sheriff with People Magazine, and there are a couple things that stood out to me. I'm curious your take on. First of all, Sheriff Nanos said that he is no longer directly communicating with the Guthrie family and says those conversations are now being handled by the FBI. And then he said, quote, "The public is frustrated, even the Guthrie family." He's technically still in charge of the investigation. I mean, technically his office is still in charge. And what do you make of the fact that he's not communicating with the family anymore?
Yeah, until there's a federal predicate, or a nexus, and the FBI, for example, if she was kidnapped and we knew she was taken across state lines, that makes it a federal investigation. In my experience, and Brian, this is going on over 40 years.
So one take for that is because, Sheriff now is no longer talking to the Guthrie family. Did they get something that tells them that she was that Nancy was taken across state lines?
It's unusual for the originating agency, the investigative agency who has originating authority, which the sheriff does, not to be in communication with the victim's family. I mean, it would be hard to figure out, well, why, how come? The record, there's enough out there on the record, as they say, there's enough in the interviews. You can see stuff to where it's kind of like, this may be in an advanced stage. Maybe there's something going on we don't know about, which clearly falls within the FBI's swim lane. This is what we do. We do this really well. I have no idea what it is, but let's say it's an advanced hostage negotiation or an advanced negotiation. That's clearly something. But to not have any contact is something that I think that's a question that ought to be answered. The question is, you say you don't have contact. The question is why?
Right. Yeah. I've wondered, and I obviously tried with my coverage, try to be really respectful to the family and think about what
Yep.
they're going through. But I have wondered sort of behind the scenes, like, with all this reporting about the sheriff and mistakes made and all the drama with him and the board of supervisors, they must know about it. And it's just sort of a distraction from, Nancy being missing.
Yeah, the cases I worked, you always wanted to make sure that you had contact with the family. When I was a detective working, I remember a homicide case. Guy was run over 8 times with his own car, drug deal gone bad. Yeah, shouldn't have been out there, but we advised him. Here's what happened. We just served a search warrant. We made some arrests. You always want to be the person that breaks the news to them. You never want them finding out about it from another source. And look, reporters got to do their job. But it's like you and I've talked about, and I've told other people, look, when you don't feed the beast, and the beast is media, they will go out.
See what he's saying? You have to make sure you're communicating with the family. You have to. When you're doing a case, you have to make sure you are communicating with the family and you are doing this and that.
And find things to report on because it's a newsworthy story. So I think that's just one of the first rules of investigations and working with the family is that maintain constant contact, always keep open lines of communication, because guess what? At some point, you're going to need their help. Let's say that a case is made. You're going to need their help in building the case, testifying, potentially providing evidence. So you always want to make sure you're on good terms with them.
The DNA,
especially if this is someone that the family knows.
I've reported there's a strand of hair that was found that's rootless, that's now been sent to Quantico that they're trying to get DNA off of. In this new interview, he said, "I know we have DNA that is unknown who the contributor or depositor is, but I think they're getting closer to finding out who that was. I have confidence in our labs. When the labs tell us, hey, there's nothing else we can do, well, then maybe we've got a problem, we've got a cold case. But right now, the labs aren't telling us that." Are you confident that they're going to get somewhere with this DNA testing? What does your gut say there?
Well, there's kind of a contradiction. On the one hand, he says 100% we're going to solve this. On the other hand, says, hey, we may not get anything from the lab and it'll be a cold case. So,
okay, so I'm going to stop right there. So they're basically talking about possibilities of what Like, we don't know. We have no idea why Sheriff Chris Nanos is no longer talking to the Guthrie family. All right. I have one more video. This is not going to be a long video. I have things to get done, but I have one more I want to show you. And this is about the FBI.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all of your support. Please click to subscribe. In this episode, I am
Actually, I showed it
continuing
before.
to dig in.
Actually, you know what? I have another video I want to show you guys. And it's not by Brian Enton. It's actually by Ashley Benfield. Shout out to her and shout out to Brian Enton. You know, these people are awesome. So I saw something, that's why I want to show you guys, that involves this case. And it's see what's called to Did Cops Switch Gears, Guthrie Family. I want to show you guys this.
Imagine build an app with your name on it. Just
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Banfield and this is Drop Dead Serious. Thank you so much for being here. A lot happened today in the Nancy Guthrie investigation, and a lot didn't happen today. I got a couple of things I'm going to tell you about, very, very important, and some incredible commentary from a guy who I've had my first conversation with him, and it will not be my last. This guy is really smart. His name's Spencer Corson, former Special Deputy U.S. Marshal. This guy knows so much, and he's got some really interesting thoughts on the things that happened today. First and foremost, big story happened today. Brian Enton discovering that FBI agents have been going around to gun stores all around Tucson with dozens of photos and names.
Okay, so I knew they were going to gun stores, but I did not know that they had a bunch of photos and names. I'm gonna write that down. FBI went to gun stores and names. So that's very interesting. They have photos and names of people.
Where'd they get those names? Why those names?
Where?
Why those people? Why those photos? 40 of them. I'm going to tell you the significance of that many.
40 of them?
Names and that action in just a moment. Also, huge news from the Pima County Sheriff. He put out a statement today that was huge, clearing Savannah Guthrie's family, including her siblings and their spouses, which is massive because, as you'll know, early in the investigation, on day 3, my source said to me, high-level source, said to me that they have towed the sister and brother-in-law's car, and that the Nest cameras were smashed, that the back door was left open, that there was blood in the house, forced entry, and that the brother-in-law may be the prime suspect now. That was on day 3. So why is it?
So So they're here thinking that Tommaso is involved.
That may have been the focus on day 3. You're going to hear some incredible analysis as to why these investigations ebb and flow, how that is 100%.
So let you guys know, I'm going to play where she talks to this guy. Where she starts talking to this guy. Because I do have stuff I gotta get done.
Said,
And
no
then,
one is cleared ever.
I'm going to play what he has to say, and then that'll be it for this video.
And then I'll paraphrase this. He said, until there's someone arrested. So this is a very big turn of events in this many days. And then, of course, in just 24 hours from what the Daily Mail said. So something had to change. So I asked somebody with a lot more skill than I have in what it's like on the ground in the original investigation, the strategies, the mechanics of the investigation, and the talent that shows up at an investigation to weigh in on how things are so different today than they were at least on day 3. Here's Spencer Corson, threat management expert, founder and CEO of Corson Security Group, and former Special Deputy U.S. Marshal, weighing in on that. Have a listen.
One is it's not outside the realm of possibility to go with the person who was with her last, which if that was the brother-in-law and that was the car that he drove, they would want to at least eliminate that vehicle of any possibility. And of course, you're going.
And that was Tommaso, brother-in-law Tommaso. He was the last one that was seen with Nancy.
Look at close friends and family, because this kind of a crime typically involves some kind of a grievance. On the pathway to violence, there's several key stages. There's a grievance, there's an ideation, which is that you can do something to remedy that grievance. Then you get into the research and planning, then you get into the breach, would be breaking into her home, and then finally the attack. And who typically is engaged in intimate partner violence is intimate partners, whether that be close friends or family. It's also important to keep in mind that over the course of an investigation, that investigation is going to yield insights that could go beyond what your initial conclusion was. And this is why you don't want to get too focused on confirmation bias and believing that it was a close friend or family member, and leave the opportunity or leave the window of opportunity open to have that investigation take you where the facts lead, not where your conjecture had taken you.
So Spencer is going to weigh in on a lot more of today's reporting. And let me tell you, I love when I meet someone like him because he is in the thick. He knows his business. And when he says something, it's not just conjecture, it's proper.
I was just sad all the time.
And as it turns out, you don't have to. I learned that Dave Kennedy's technology can actually do a handshake with that exact pacemaker. That pacemaker has its own address at 800 to 1,000 feet. And then just one quick addition. I should mention it just because it's making headlines. The president weighed in and threatened the kidnapper with the death penalty, but you should also know that that is a state decision. And yes, Arizona does have the death penalty, but that would be Arizona prosecutors if they find the person. And of course, one other key element here, Mrs. Guthrie would have had to die. This would have had to be considered a murder in order for the death penalty to attach. So it's just important to put context into a statement like that. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure you all knew that as well. But before I get to Spencer and his remarkable brain, I mean, this guy, threat management expert, former Special Deputy U.S. Marshal, this guy knows everything about investigations and tracking bad guys. I want to thank my sponsors who make this podcast possible. Also, hit the subscribe button. It is such a solid for me. I'd so appreciate it. And Cook Unity has been a great partner, and I really like them. This has been a lifesaver to my 16-hour schedule. Right? Chef Arthi Sampath. I'm now only picking her stuff. And if you want some half price meals, You're welcome. Half price. Go to the link in the description and try Cook Unity. I got you 50% off your first order. Just click the link in the description below. Use my code Banfield to try it out. That's Cook Unity. Use the code Banfield and then tell me what you like best. All right, so now to my conversation with Spencer Courtson. Again, he's a threat management expert, founder and CEO of Courtson Security Group, former Special Deputy U.S. Marshal, author of The Safety Trap, and host of Courson's Corner podcast. Have a listen. Spencer, what do you make of this? What do you make of this report that the FBI is going around to Tucson gun stores with 40 names and 40 photographs, asking if someone in that store has seen anybody come in or purchased a weapon there?
40 people is well outside the framing of usual suspects and goes more to shooting a fish in a barrel. 40 people is not exactly a narrow, you haven't really narrowed things down at that point. I mean, you can ask somebody if they've remembered one person, maybe two, but if you start showing 40 photos to someone, they're going to get really confused as to who's who, especially if they look even remotely similar to each other.
And that's the pragmatic.
Okay, so that's all I'm going to play. I'll play this in another video. I still have to get done, but my thing is what's going on. Why is, why is Chris Sheriff Nanos no longer talking to the Guthrie family and the FBI is now taking over that? Maybe something will come out. Maybe something will come out and we will be told why. But until then, stay blessed, be kind to one another, do something nice, even if it's opening a door for a stranger. Alright, bye!